As we transition into our sermon time, I invite you to take a moment with me, as we usually begin, to take a full breath. Experience the welcoming of God's Spirit and letting go of that which we don't need. Noticing the gift of breath moving in and out. Pray with me. O Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be pleasing to you, O Lord, my rock and my redeemer. Amen. Well, a sermon teacher that I have reminds me to always keep this question in mind. What's the problem that the scripture that we're reading is addressing? What's going on for the community? So I think it's a relevant question for our text today. What is the problem in the community of the readers that the author of these scriptures are addressing? What's going on for these communities? Well, Isaiah's people are living in exile. They have experienced the destruction of Jerusalem. They have lost everything. It is a bleak, bleak time for them. Every stone in their lives has been knocked down. Very little hope was found for them. Little hope of new life or a restored community. They were in need of hope. Well, the early readers of Luke's gospel, they were living about 50 years after Jesus' death, and their beloved temple in Jerusalem had been destroyed about a decade before. They were in a time of experiencing severe persecution in the church. While those listening to Jesus in our story today, well, they may have seen a building adorned with beautiful stones. Stones and gifts dedicated to God. Those listening, those reading the gospel, saw only rubble. And so it may be for some of us today. Some of us may have lives that we're building, lives that are adorned with beautiful stones, healthy families, meaningful careers, lives that we dedicate to God. And others of us, we might feel like our lives are in ruins, broken, crumbling around the edges. Our passage from Isaiah this morning begins, "For I am about to create new heavens and a new earth. The former things shall not be remembered or come to mind. New things, everything. New earth, new heavens. Everything new. Everything starting over." Well, for those who have nothing, newness may be soothing. They may be hopeful words to hear. Isaiah maps out a world unimaginable, long life, abundance in every way. So many promises in Isaiah. But whether we have little like those in exile, or we have lives that feel full and blessed, uncertainty can be unsettling and sometimes downright terrifying. Because what happens when we don't want those new things? look back in the stories earlier in the Old Testament, in the stories of Exodus, the Israelites, when they were recently freed under Pharaoh, they begged to go back to Egypt, to the land and the life they knew. They wanted security over freedom, not some new life that was full of unknowns. Well, here in our reading in Isaiah, the Israelites have been in a foreign land for a long time, with everything lost, their land, their people. I wonder, can they trust in this new thing? Can they trust that this new thing isn't just one more bad thing? Isaiah was given a vision for what lay ahead for his people, a vision that none of them could see, a vision of a peaceable kingdom, of a new Jerusalem, a rebuilt Jerusalem. Well, that vision of Isaiah, it is so different from our gospel reading today. Here, Jesus speaks of a very different new thing that's coming. His is not one where the lion and the lamb lie down together. No, his new thing is one of wars and destruction. This new thing that Jesus talks about is not something that anyone wants to hear. Nations will rise against nation, kingdom against kingdom, famines, plagues. It's all coming, Jesus said. But first, even before that, first comes your own persecution. They will arrest you and throw you in prison. Indeed, the words of Isaiah, "For I am about to create new heavens and a new earth. The former things shall not be remembered or come to mind." These words have a new meaning. The new thing that Jesus talks about doesn't hold much good news. No, it sounds terrifying. And in the midst of this, what does Jesus tell his followers? Well, if you want to, I invite you to turn to that passage in the Bible in Luke, because I think Jesus' response deserves our careful attention here. Because in the midst of destruction, he has some instructions for those listening, and I think for us today. So in verse 8 is his first piece of instruction. He says, "Beware. Beware, don't be led astray. And don't go after those." No, I think he's saying stay rooted in me. Stay rooted in my teachings. And then when you hear of wars, don't be terrified. Stay rooted in me. These things must take place. But he says, but before the world comes crashing down around you, before all of that, you will suffer. You will be betrayed by parents, brothers, sisters, by your faith community. Some will even be put to death. But don't be terrified. No, this is an opportunity to testify, Jesus said. Beware, don't be led astray. Don't be terrified. And his third instruction is don't prepare your defense. For I will give you words and wisdom that no one will withstand. Bad things are coming, Jesus said. Expect it. He doesn't offer any of the good news that Isaiah foretold. No sugarcoating what's coming. But let's look for a moment at how the passage ends. What Nell read was a slightly different variation of what's in the New Revised Standard Version. But not a hair of your head will perish, he says. By your endurance, you will gain your souls. You simply need to endure. By your endurance, you will gain your souls. that can also be read, by your endurance you will gain your life. Life with a capital L. Life that can't be taken from you. Life that you're terrified of losing. That's the new thing. That's the new thing that's going on here. So what does it mean for us to endure? That word to endure means to suffer without breaking. At its root, this word endure means to harden, to remain solid and steadfast. To suffer without breaking, to remain steadfast. Well, I turned to a couple of ultra long distance runners I know this week and asked them about endurance, how they prepare for unimaginably long races. And two things came to the surface for them. One was to have a plan and stick to it, to stay focused. Don't be led astray. That endurance is built over time, and it takes disciplined work. Be ready. Endurance takes time and discipline. And the second was to be mentally ready. That's the key. While disciplining the body is essential, so is preparing the mind, because suffering is a part of these events for those athletes. And part of that disciplining the mind is staying focused and remaining grateful, welcoming the hardships that come, because they will come. One of these friends sent me a link about Camille Herron. Have you ever heard that name? Camille Herron. I'd never heard of her. Well, talk about endurance. Last December, Camille set a new world record, running 162.9 miles in a 24-hour period. She set the new 100-mile record and 24-hour world records. How did she do it? Well, the Taco Bell double-decker taco and beer at hour 21, she said, were key to her finishing the race strong. She loves Taco Bell. But she said in every picture of her, she said, every picture shows me smiling. She said, I really had this whole joy with what I was doing. I was embracing it. Yet in the midst of her literally being sick and vomiting during the race, she found joy along the way. She was committed to a vision, enduring, and endurance with joy. By your endurance, you will gain your souls. You will gain your life, Jesus told his followers. Jesus seems to be saying, watch me. Watch me. I'm going to endure all these things first. Pay attention and don't be led astray. Jesus was saying, I am rooted in God. I am solidly linked to my Creator. He said, I have prepared for this. He knows that those listening will be the ones who turn on him, to betray him. He knows he's about to pick up his cross. Yes, suffering and love are Jesus' way. And yet that's not the end. To endure, you need to stay rooted in me, Jesus is telling his listeners, telling us. Hold fast to that rock, for I am the rock that cannot be torn down. Well, in our lives that might feel like they have been knocked over, knocked out of balance. For those of us who feel like we're building up lives and yet sometimes suffer, I wonder, what does it mean for us to endure? What does it mean for us to find that endurance? God is present in our world. Jesus reminds us that he is present in our life, your life, my life, even when things get so bad that it feels like the world comes crashing down around us. Jesus reminds us that he came to give us life and that we may have it abundantly. The journey is long, my friends, but by endurance you will gain your life. May we hold on to that rock together. Amen.